Mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer. After that terminal diagnosis, she had a total kidney removal. Then there was a surgical complication, a 1 in 20,000 surgical complication. They nicked lymph ducts and lymph fluid started filling up her abdomen. She almost died a number of times. Our family doctor put Dad on antidepressants and an anti-anxiety medication called clonazepam so Dad could tolerate the stress. We didn't think much of it at the time. When Dad got back, he tried to get off the medications he was prescribed. Turns out clonazepam is hell to get off of. Dad's in rehab using other medications to try and get off of this clonazepam. Did you know they put suicide warnings on the bottle in the States? Would have been nice to know prior to the prescription.
I've always needed a drug, Jesse.
You have mental issues?
I do have a history of depression.
And so how are you going to help anybody else get healed if you got a mental issue?
Well, it's a dubious claim that because a mental health professional also has issues or problems that he or she cannot be of help to.
But how will a crazy person help another crazy person?
Crazy?
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to iCkEdMeL Uncensored, late night recording, and I wanted to talk about Jordan Peterson. I have a lot of thoughts about him admitting himself into rehab. Clonazepam is the same medication. One's the brand name, the other one's the active ingredient. And I wanted to share also two stories of mine, kind of crazy stories. One's kind of funny, but just to show the depth and the gravity of Klonopin. I've had experience with Klonopin. I've tried it once or twice. I was also given Ativan, lorazepam, in the hospital when I had tachycardia, which means like a really fast heart rate. So I'm going to talk about those experiences also from a point of, safety and not recommending that stuff and just being careful about what you take and what's prescribed. Now, Jordan Peterson, he's like this really big guy on YouTube. He's a clinical psychologist, professor of psychology at University of Toronto. He's known as a self-help guru. So that's one of the things that he's being criticized heavily. And it makes me think about Jared Wilson, the pastor that killed himself, that was helping people with mental health issues. He's facing criticism, Jordan Peterson, because he's known as the self-help guru, yet he's admitting himself into rehab for Klonopin. He's also known for this book called 12 Rules to Life, which is a book that I wanted to buy. And personally, from where I've heard him first was on YouTube. He criticizes political correctness. He had this big thing too with in Canada with this bill they were trying to push, where they wanted to kind of force you to refer to transgender or whatever to their certain pronouns, which is kind of getting a little ridiculous, some of the pronouns. So he's a really popular guy. And I wanted to talk about Klonopin. Oh, but before we even get into this, the podcast, the episode, I wanted to thank the Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. Angel, Ernesto, Catherine, Katrina, Keisha, Shakanya. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys supporting me there because YouTube is demonetizing a lot of these videos. And Angel's very active, strong woman. I appreciate all the stories that she shared. Really, really good person. Really active person on YouTube. So where can we take this? Let's talk about Klonopin. I think a lot of people, if you haven't tried it yourself, or if you're not in the medical field, some people just kind of see it as any other drug or medication. And by the way, Jordan Peterson was prescribed this because he was dealing with his wife's terminal cancer, which is now in remission. And I guess with all the pressure and stuff, he started taking this medication that was prescribed by his doctor. He tried to quit cold turkey, and this is one of those medications that if you've been taking it for a prolonged time, however amount of months or whatever you're prescribed it, you can't just stop at cold turkey. No matter how hard or tough you think you are, this medication is no joke. This medication is compared to like Ativan, lorazepam, Xanny bars, whatever you want to call them, is a joke. It's lightweight. So he tried to quit cold turkey. That didn't work out. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about the side effects, because we've spoken about this. My father committed suicide, and when my father committed suicide, I went through this whole crazy ordeal in my life. It happened in 2010, where I started doing and trying all these crazy things, and I had a pretty crazy life for 2-3 years at least, probably. And a lot of the stories, a lot of things that I went through, I haven't shared. So I'm kind of like, it's kind of cool to be able to share some of those stories. And even the stories that I share have to be somewhat censored in a way. So, but clonazepam, okay? It's a controlled substance, according to this one site. I don't really know. It's a controlled substance. There's different levels of controlled substances, starting from C1 to C5 controlled. And one of the symptoms here, it can cause paranoid or suicidal ideation and impair memory, judgment, coordination. Combining with other substances, particularly alcohol, can slow breathing and lead to death. I've even heard of withdrawing from this medication can cause death. Really, really serious drug. One of the things, there's such a long list of side effects, right? It says there are a small number of people who take anticonvulsants because it's for like anxiety, for seizures. There's a bunch of different things that it treats. Seizures, bipolar disorder, pain. It says a small number of these people may experience depression, suicidal thoughts, attempts, or mental/mood problems. Long-term use has an even longer list of side effects. Polydrug abuse, which means you take multiple things at once, and that's how you like to do your stuff. Mental confusion, vertigo, episodic memory loss, aggression, hostility, antisocial behavior, depression, emotional blunting. That's another, you gotta think about that, emotional blunting. Birth defects in unborn babies. Short-term withdrawal symptoms include seizures, insomnia. Some of the long-term abusers of Klonopin end up suffering from prolonged, sometimes endless bouts of depression. People may also be left with lowered inhibitions that cause them to act more impulsively and make irrational decisions. People who are addicted to Klonopin may experience full-blown hallucinations and even conversations with people who aren't really there. Many started using Klonopin as a legitimate reason. So, we can talk about this guy, Jordan Peterson, that he was prescribed this for the stressful situation. The other thing I've suffered too from is panic attacks. I used to have really, really bad panic attacks. We're going to get into that with the tachycardia. But it's used to treat anxiety. As a result, they fear their anxious and paranoid symptoms will return if they stop using. And that's one of the things too, is when you use these type of medications, right, you become so dependent on it that when you stop taking it, it's like, what am I going to do if a moment comes? What am I going to do if that time comes? You become so dependent, you don't even think you can handle it yourself. Thankfully, I've never been prescribed or on this kind of medication. I have tried it, but I've never been on it prescribed. And to this day, I've overcome my panic attacks. I still get, anxious and anxiety. I get social anxiety, but I don't have the full-blown panic attacks. And I think a lot of people too like to say that they're depressed because it seems cool. Some people like to say that they have a panic attack. If you haven't been to the hospital for it, just some people like to exaggerate it.
So he stopped cold turkey in the summer after talking with a psychiatrist and experienced horrific physical withdrawal and anxiety.
However, substance abuse can worsen pre-existing anxiety. This type of substance abuse can severely intensify symptoms of mental health disorders and make them quite complicated to treat. Others may suffer from substance abuse, psychotic disorders when abusing this type of drug. Here's some more symptoms too. Psychological impacts, increased risk of Alzheimer's disease, milder forms of memory impairment, depression, and anxiety that no longer responds to the drug treatment, and reduced inhibition. So like what I've been reading from this medication, Klonopin, this is something that initially is supposed to help. From my personal experience, it like numbs you kind of, so you don't have those feelings and all that kind of stuff. But the problem is when you keep taking it prolonged, you no longer know how to function without it. You don't know how to deal without it. And if you're somebody that's ever dealt with panic attacks like me, I used to get it like so bad where my heart was like for hours, and you literally tell yourself and you feel like on your left arm coming up, and you keep thinking like, is it gonna stop, is it gonna stop? And I think if you have these panic attacks where you get the adrenaline rush, if you get so scared that you get the adrenaline rush, which I used to not even be able to talk about my panic attacks. Talking about my panic attacks would sometimes even trigger a panic attack. But I used to get this thing too where like you get the adrenaline going, and then the adrenaline goes in for a while, and then you're kind of thinking like, is it going to happen again? Is it going to stop? And what happens is too, is once you suffer like a big panic attack, a lot of times you have these little small panic attacks after. I mean, from my personal experience, the best thing you can do with panic attacks is deal with it. Self-medicating, especially long-term, is going to have some really bad effects, in my opinion.
I did try clonazepam a couple of times this summer to try to stop panicking. It was not good.
Klonopin is a benzodiazepine. Valium, I believe, is also lorazepam, Ativan, Xanibars, which is what I'm going to talk about too. That's also considered a benzodiazepine. It's a drug that works on the GABA receptors, used for anxiety, epileptic seizure, and spasm. Now, I mean, it's just kind of interesting with all these medications, the long list of side effects, right? Like just huge side effects, and you're taking it to treat one thing, and in the end, you can end up with so many worse symptoms than what you started with. And if you saw the beginning, that was Jordan Peterson's daughter speaking on the situation, and she was saying that because Klonopin is a long-acting benzodiazepine, that now they're using all these short-term, so they're treating him. The medication problem that he has, they're treating him with other medications, short-acting ones, to try to get him off of it.
They use shorter-acting benzodiazepines to help wean off the clonazepam, which is a very long-acting benzodiazepine. So let this be a warning to people. Be very wary of clonazepam. It's not just an anti-anxiety medication. It's very, very difficult to get off of without experiencing physical withdrawal if you take it for more than 6 weeks, say.
I mean, I've seen in the hospital, they have this whole protocol for tapering people off of Klonopin. So, first of all, before we get into my personal experiences, I would love to know from you guys what you think about this. You know, a guy that's a self-help guru. A lot of people are criticizing him because they're saying he's a hypocrite. How can you help people like this? Because one of the self-help thing that he does is, you know, he says that whatever situation you're in your life basically is your own fault, and you need to figure out how to get out of that, right? And I really like this guy, and I think he did the responsible thing in getting help, right? Because I mean, think about the suicidal side effects of this medication. He could have tried to, especially when you have that pressure when you're a public figure and you know that you're going to go to a rehab and it's going to have all these implications and all these people are going to tear you down. Which surprisingly, the media hasn't been bad. It's a lot of pressure. Now, one more point before we get into my stories is this guy, Peter Kaufman. I saw him on YouTube. He was criticizing Jordan Peterson, and I have to say, this guy did a good job. He did an excellent job of criticizing him, and this is what he said, the gist of it, one of the things he said. And this is a conversation that we've had on here with I've had this conversation with some of you guys regarding insurance. You know, he said that the system is messed up. You know, these people that are rich, that have money, this guy's really well off, they can afford to get help. But what about the people that can't afford it, that don't have the insurance? You know, and this guy, he seems like to be a Bernie Sanders supporter, which I'm really not. But I have to say what he's saying makes sense, because when I used to work in the hospital, I had amazing insurance. Like, it was great, especially compared to now. Great insurance. You know, I could go to the psychologist, especially when my dad passed away. I go to the psychologist. I can do what I needed to do. I've never been on an antidepressant, by the way. I've always been really afraid and skeptical of them because I heard of all the different side effects. And the other problem with medication, too, is that, well, antidepressants, and I've heard this from so many people, the doctors are pretty much testing, because these medications affect everybody differently. So they're doing like these tests.
You are a mental health counselor, right?
Yes.
How long have you been a mental health counselor?
Probably 35 years. There is also research to support that antidepressants can help. I take the position, Jesse, that using antidepressants for depression is like, in many cases, putting a chainsaw through butter. We don't know a lot about how the mechanisms of the brain work, nor do we know a lot about how antidepressants work.
You're basically, you have to try this medication, and the medication, as soon as you take it, doesn't just start working. It could take a couple of weeks. It could take a month. You have to take this medication for a month just to see if it works for you or not. And if it doesn't work, then they take you off and put you on another medication. You have to keep going on and on and on until you figure out what it is that you need. So while I was saying with the hospital, I had this great insurance, but now I have a really good job. I love the job that I have, but what I'm realizing, and what a lot of people go through, is the insurance isn't great. I have a $3,000 deductible. When I try to go to see a psychologist, a psychiatrist, whatever, a lot of them, they see the type of insurance you have. They know that you're going to have a high deductible, and they don't want to take you. They turn you away. So for all this, I mean, you have to really think about it. And I know some of you have commented in the comment section. For all this talk that we have about suicide, and we got to do something, and we got to make a change, and how are we going to help these people, and something's got to give, and what's going on? The truth of the matter is, until the system changes, which is what Peter Kaufman was saying, which is so true, it's not going to stop. You know, if these people really cared, if the government really cared, they would help these people with these issues. So let me get into my first story. This is kind of a crazy story, and I can't tell you the full details of the story, but this is my Klonopin experience. This was after my dad passed away. And by the way, just for this full disclaimer, I don't do any of this stuff at all anymore, but I was going through a troubled time back then. And, I was partying. I was having a good time. I was having a bad time. And I went to a friend's house. It was a couple of us there. They wanted me to smoke marijuana. Now, marijuana for me personally has never been a good, rarely ever has been a good experience for me. Somebody like me with social and anxiety, for some reason, marijuana never worked for me. And this is for anybody that's watching this, for the young people. If it doesn't work for you, because there's a lot of peer pressure. I faced a lot of peer pressure, but I also wanted to fit in because all my friends are doing it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. And your real friends will respect that, and they're not going to force you. And I wasn't that kind of person. Marijuana is, at times when I was younger, I wish it would, because maybe I wouldn't have done all the things that I did, but I wasn't. But anyway, I went to this friend's house, right? We're all hanging out. These people are potheads, respectfully. And they had this thing called wax. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, wax. It's like a very highly concentrated form of THC, which just THC. I think it's like not any fillers. It's so crazy because it's like this whole device where they take like a blowtorch and they melt the wax. It's this crazy contraption. So I'm there. I think I might have had a drink or something, and I'm hanging out with the people, and they're like, come on, Mel, come on, man, you gotta do it. And this is a thing too where, just to get a little bit off the topic for a second, where I did a video on mushrooms, and this guy commented recently on my video. He said he was going through all this mental stuff. He was dealing with all these struggles in his life, and he had a friend telling him, come on, man, you gotta do mushrooms, man, come on. And this guy saw my video because he was doing research, and he was like, yo, thank you for telling me your experience. Because he said that he decided not to go with it, and the friend ended up admitting to him that he just wanted to see him freak out. He just wanted to see him go crazy. And some people, they just want to see you lose your mind. They want to record you, and they're going to upload it. So don't let people force you into those kind of things, especially if you're having some sort of mental stuff. But anyway, so I ended up doing it. I caved in because one of the chicks that was there. Now this chick is one of my friend. He was my friend's girlfriend. I think they're still together. I'm not sure, but he was my friend's girlfriend. And oh my god! So she was like, I have a Klonopin. So if you happen to freak out, you can take this and you'll be perfectly fine. You'll be normal. You'll be good to go. So I was like, I was kind of on the fence. I said, all right, I went with it. They had to do the whole device thing because I don't know how to do any of that stuff. I don't even know how to roll. I've never been a pothead. I'm not into it. I've only had very few good experiences, maybe 3 or 4. And most of them have either been a one-on-one experience, just one-on-one with somebody that I'm comfortable with, or maybe somebody rolled me up something to take home. And then I'll do a puff and I'll have some pretty good sleep, relaxed sleep. But most of the experiences have been horrible for me. Super panic attacks. I'll literally leave a group of friends that I'm with just because I'm freaking out, and I'll drive home. And I can't even really drive on that stuff. That's how bad it is for me. So I was convinced. I took a puff, and bro, everything. Let me just put it to you like this to keep it 100% real. I don't know what happened. All I know is that I must have been out of it for a minute or so. Next thing I know is my face is in this chick's chest, which is my friend's girlfriend, but they were in an open relationship or something, but my face is in her chest, and I come up and I'm just like, and everybody's staring at me. I'm just like, and they're kind of laughing and stuff, and it was kind of like whatever. Dude, the wax thing is just, it's like, it's too much. It's too much. It's for these people that like smoke every day, and even for people that smoke every day, it's too much. These people just, they keep creating these things that take you higher and higher and higher. That I never did again. That was the one time I did it, and I would never do that crap again. If you're watching this, you're a young person or whatever, and you're thinking of doing wax, don't do it. Trust me. It's like crackhead level of marijuana, seriously. So, of course, I start to kind of freak out. I'm getting nervous, and I have to censor, I guess, a good portion of this story, but I end up getting the Klonopin, okay? So, the Klonopin, pretty much, and it's hard to say what was the Klonopin, what was the wax, but the Klonopin at that point, I was like a zombie. I was functional, and the anxiety was gone, but I was like very numb. It wasn't like a feel-good feeling either. I was just numb, very out of it, because you got to understand too, I don't even know what strength I took. There's different strengths, but since I don't, first of all, very lightweight with marijuana. Marijuana, THC, is something that builds up in your system. So if you're somebody that smokes all the time, it's going to be in your system for a long time. If you're somebody that does it once in a blue moon, you could smoke one day and it's gone in a few days, kind of like that. So very lightweight. The marijuana was messing me up, plus Klonopin too. I was just zombie gone. And back then, and especially with the things I was dealing with, I guess it wasn't that bad. I mean, if I didn't have the Klonopin, I would have been screwed. I don't know what I would have done. And the other thing too, I have to say with Klonopin that I noticed, inhibitions were lowered for sure. I was very open to suggestion, to the point where like somebody could probably tell me to do something and I would do it. So to me, that I look back on that night and it's kind of like a funny night, the whole part of waking up into opening my eyes into somebody's like chest, a chick's chest, and I ended up having relations that night with the chick. That was, yeah. So I kind of woke up the next day and I was like, what the hell? Because there's no way you can drive on that stuff either, especially if you're not experienced. There's no way you can drive on that. And I mean, I remember the night, but it was kind of like just it's just hard to describe. And I can't imagine taking Klonopin on a regular daily basis. I don't know how people do it. Yeah, so that was that experience. That was one of my crazy stories, and that's not the full thing of it, but that was most of it. Now, there was this other time where I had tachycardia, and I'm pretty sure I've had tachycardia many times, but this was one time that I was in a hospital, which ironically was one of the last hospitals that I worked in. I wasn't working there at the time. It was because the last hospital I was working I was actually there, admitted, but it was many years ago when it actually happened, around the time of my father, which was like around 2010. And what happened was with that story is I was with a friend, and it was like, I think it was for a birthday celebration. It was just me and this chick. We were gonna hang out. We had a hotel, and I got a random friend. I reached out to a random friend. The random friend gave us 2 pills, and for a good time or whatever, right? And one of the things I learned back in 2010 when I was into that whole phase and all that stuff, and I'm only telling this because I know this stuff can be used against me, but I think it's just such an issue that we need to kind of talk about this. You get shunned, you got people using it against you. One of the smartest things that I did back then was buy a testing kit, because when you're taking X, okay, there's a lot of fake substances out there. Most people, I can say, especially here in South Florida, have never experienced actual X. They've gotten some sort of meth, something mixed with whatever. They haven't gotten the real stuff, and most people don't have a testing kit. Back then, I was rolling with some friends. I did a lot of research. I had my testing kit, and you can tell at least whether it's real or fake. But at that time when I was with this chick, this was in the very beginning of when I started to get into all the craziness that I was getting to. So at the time, I didn't have a testing kit. But we took the pill, and we were hanging out, whatever. Out of nowhere, and this is I'm going to tell you why I think it was a panic attack. Out of nowhere, I just, my heart started racing. And this is why I say too, if you're, especially with that person that asked me about mushrooms, and if you're taking stuff, you want to be in a controlled environment. You want to be with people you can trust, and you don't want to just get any random thing off the street, off a person you don't know. One of the biggest rules too is never go to a party and just start buying stuff off of people, because a lot of times it's going to be fake, because they know that they're never going to see you again. But my heart started racing. And for some reason, something told me that I got to get out of there. So we left, and I was like, I think I need to go to the hospital. And I was afraid to react on that, because part of me was like, maybe I'm overreacting. But the other part of me was like, it's getting worse. My heart was just... And at that time, too, I still hadn't overcome panic attacks. I was just dealing with panic attacks. And to be honest, to keep it real, the panic attack started after my father committed suicide, but I can't put that on him. I think it was a symptom of all the things that I was doing, because before that I had never had panic attacks, and I always looked down on people that took substances. Before then, and this was when I was 25, I'm 34 now. Before then, I looked down on those kind of people, like, oh, they're trash, and oh, whatever, you can't. I used to look down on those people, and then I started experimenting in that. So we left, and we started going to the nearest hospital, which is the hospital that I used to work in previously. And I think the chick was driving, because I couldn't even drive. I was so freaked out, and I was trying to GPS. I literally, in my mind, this is when my panic attacks were so bad, I thought I was gonna die at any moment. Like, my heart was beating so hard, so fast, I thought I was gonna die. So we finally get to this hospital, right? We get into the ER, and let me just say, this hospital is a horrible hospital. Thank you for the opportunity that I was there. But many people know, if you have an urgent situation, this is not the hospital you want to go to. There's other better hospitals. You pretty much, in my opinion, you go there to die. It's probably, I think it's gotten a little bit better now, but there's a lot of corruption in that hospital too. I'm not going to get into it, but it just, on a systemic level, CEOs in and out, all this kind of stuff. You wouldn't believe some of the things that I've seen. But so I get there, and I tell them about my situation. And here's a thing too. This is the first time I've ever experienced that people look at you differently when you tell them you took a pill. I told them I took an unknown pill. It was supposed to be X, but I told them I took an unknown, I didn't know what it was. I told them the truth, because at that point too, when you're in that kind of situation, when you're in a hospital or something like that, or let's say you're in an ambulance, you want to tell them the truth, because it could really mean, be the difference between life and death. Like if you're on an opiate or something like that, they can use Narcan and potentially save your life. But I told them I was, I took a random pill, whatever. They told me to sit down. I sat down, and the whole time, like, my panic attack, my heart would not let up. I'm feeling like sensations throughout my body, but mostly in my left arm. The problem is too with panic attacks, when you start Googling and you start looking up things, and it tells you the symptoms of a heart attack, then you start like thinking and oh, is it possible to get a heart attack with a panic attack? And then you start looking up all these videos of how to overcome panic attacks, and some of those places want you to pay, and it is a craziness that I've experienced several times. It's a horrible feeling. And most of the time when I was going through it, I didn't want to tell people I was going through it. I'm the type of person that I could be freaking out sitting right next to you and just be sitting there. But inside, I'm dying, like freaking out. So it took them a really long time to even see me. I was so pissed. I was really upset. They finally see me. I did like a urine test. I did a blood test. And according to them, nothing came back positive. No drugs, nothing. So, and the person that took the other pill with me, she said she wasn't feeling anything. So either the pills were bunk, like they were fake stuff. Maybe I caught, because sometimes you gotta think too, these people are, here's the danger with these pills, man. You gotta be really careful. I mean, I'll make another video on this, but people are making these pills themselves. They buy a little press machine. There's no, it's not like it's in a controlled environment. People are making this stuff, putting themselves together. So who knows if, the powder or the ratio, or if one pill has more than another, or if they're completely nothing in there. You have no idea, and that's another thing that can bring on an anxiety and panic. If you have no idea what you're taking, you're just taking it. So they did the test, and then if I finally get into a room, they hook me up to the monitor, and I don't remember. I wish I could remember my heart rate. I don't remember my heart rate. But they told me I had tachycardia. I looked up. I could see my heart just fast. I was freaking out. I honestly thought I was going to die. I was looking at this person, and I was like thinking like, yo, I think this is going to be it. Because like, I think they didn't take me as serious at first. But then once they hooked me up to the monitor and they saw my heart, they told me tachycardia. They gave me Ativan, IV. And I don't know if it was 1 milligram or 2 milligrams, but they gave me the Ativan. Ativan's a really thick substance. I've made a bunch of IVs like that. It's a really thick substance. It's a benzodiazepine. I don't think it's as strong as Klonopin.
I had taken lorazepam for about 1.5 years when I was 20 to help with sleeping and hadn't had an issue getting off of it. Didn't realize clonazepam is an entirely different monster.
But they gave it to me IV. When you take a medication IV, I don't have... The only IV experience I've ever had is saline. When I've gotten saline in the hospital. And the only other IV was that time where they gave me Ativan IV. Now, it worked like almost instantly. And let me tell you the effects of Ativan, lorazepam, Xanny bars, whatever you want to call it. And the thing is with IV2, you feel like the full effects, because with tablets, capsules, pills, whatever, there's a whole thing called bioavailability. So certain medications have different bioavailabilities. So when you take it, only a certain percentage of it is actually absorbed into your body. Then you have things like half-life and all this kind of stuff, which I can't even think about it right now. But when I got the Ativan dose, I felt calm, relaxed, everything calmed down. My heart rate was still going fast for a little bit, but it slowly started to calm down. And here's the weird thing, the freaky thing about it, and this is what makes me think about these medications sometimes, that I was okay with dying. This is the weirdest. I've never experienced that in my life. I had this like peace come over me where I was just like calmed down, and I told this person like, I'm okay, whatever happens, and I was okay. Now in that situation, it really helped me out, because with what I was going through, and it was a controlled environment, and my heart and everything went back to normal, I was fine. But just think about somebody that takes that kind of medication all the time on a daily basis, when they're okay with, if they're okay with dying, or their feelings and everything gets numbed. It's very dangerous. So that was my experience with Ativan. And I've tried the pill, I think once or twice. And I guess it had almost the same. The thing with that is like I've never been a prolonged user, so to me, like, you really didn't feel anything. You just felt kind of more relaxed. It's one of those medications too that's very dangerous with alcohol, because you can black out on it. Black out, wake up, you don't know where you're at. Very dangerous. So I'm glad I never got that far into things like that. But I've heard horror stories. I've heard of people getting violent. Another thing too that's really dangerous that is Ambien. Ambien is crazy, because I've taken it. Like, a friend gave it to me. I've taken it maybe 2-3 times. And it was just to go to sleep, because I was turned up and I couldn't sleep. So you take that, you go to sleep, and I had no problems with it. But I've seen other people personally take that stuff, start drinking, and then not go to sleep. I don't know how you could stay awake on it. I don't know how you force yourself, but people would forcibly stay awake, and you will see a completely different person jumping on cars, doing all kinds of craziness, and then the next day not remember anything. Anyway, I'm gonna call it a night. You guys take care of yourselves. If you want to come on the show, you want to talk about something that you're passionate about, or something that you've gone through in your life, reach out to me, email me. Let's talk about it. Let's make a show. If you want to promote your product, your website, your YouTube channel, reach out to me and we can work something out. And I think I've said enough for tonight in this episode. Take care of yourselves. Good night. Subscribe, like, and all that good share stuff. And yeah, peace.
I see potential subscribers. strive for more. This is the mother info war.